Music has always been such an important part of my life that I can pinpoint moments in my life based off of the albums that I was listening to during that time. And that's all kind of moments and emotions in my life. Whether it was happy, whether it was sad, whether I was going through something really great like graduating school, or going through some heartbreak, or going through some friendships dissolving, whatever it was, I can pinpoint some tunes that I was listening to help me get through those moments. In a way, it's almost like I've curated this most perfect soundtrack to my life. Shout out Kid Cudi. I've mentioned before how much I love to listen to albums on loop once I've decided they're worth listening to on repeat. And that's at home, at school, at work, at the gym, in the car, all kinds of places. Wherever there's speakers, I'm listening to some music. Since I was a young boy, I've always found a good reason or an excuse to listen to some music. And I could go on for hours, days, weeks, months about all the favorite albums that I have and the albums that have really meant something to me over my life, albums that I still listen to this day, albums that I only listen to at a specific moment in my life that still I feel the impact, even though I might not be listening to those same albums anymore. I have so much love for different albums and the artists that put those albums together. But there are some albums that I feel have stood out among the rest. So to try to narrow it down to my favorite albums would just be impossible. I could go on forever. If you really want to know, ask me some questions in the comments and I'll respond to a bunch telling you about my favorite albums. But I thought it would be fun to narrow it down to just a few, and this was really hard to do, to just a few of the albums that have really stood out to me during different milestone moments of my life. If you're watching this video and you like music as much as I do, then you probably collect vinyl records or you maybe collect some CDs. Well, I've got some good news for you. We've got a sponsor for this video that's gonna help you save some dough on your vinyl and your CD collection. Vinyl.com is the place to go for all of your vinyl and CD needs. You can shop over 60,000 records that they have on their store online. And it's so easy to find what you're looking for, whether you're looking for something on sale or whether you're looking specifically for some colored vinyl, because I know you like the colored vinyl, all right? Sometimes we want a little spice in our collection. The nice folks over at Vinyl.com reached out to me and said, we want to save your viewers some money when it comes to their music needs. So they gave me the promo code EDDY10, that's EDDY10, for you to use at Vinyl.com at checkout to save 10% on all your purchases made through Vinyl.com. Or you can click the link in the description to take you directly to Vinyl.com with the code EDDY10 already automatically added to your checkout. Save yourself some money, buy yourself some records, have yourself a good time while you're listening. Shout out to Vinyl.com for sponsoring today's video. In one of my previous videos, I showed off this bad boy, my Nintendo 2DS, which is modded. And I showed off that I was playing some Pokemon Fire Red, and I just finished my run through Pokemon Fire Red. And I bring that up because recently, Nintendo and Pokemon have announced that the GBA Kanto remakes for Pokemon games are coming to the Nintendo Switch, and you can play them and purchase them legally for the first time without having to buy them secondhand since they came out, which was over 20 years ago at this point. Now, some people such as myself are upset that the price point is $20 for each game. I feel like that's overpriced for a game this old, but it's a premium Nintendo IP, so yeah, that should have been expected. And a lot of people are arguing about whether it's worth it or not to purchase the game because it's so easy to obtain Pokemon games, especially these GBA games, for free through things like ROMs, and phones can run these emulators, computers can run these emulators. It's super easy and accessible. But some people don't like to play ROMs. They like to have the official cartridges or the official games and downloads. But it's not so easy to pick up a copy of Pokemon Emerald or Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green these days when these cartridges go for hundreds of dollars sometimes, and then you have to get a working Game Boy system in order to play these games. So I understand both sides of the argument. I understand where both sides are coming from. Personally, I think I'm going to end up spending the $20, even though I think it is overpriced, because I do think that it is worth getting the event Pokemon like Deoxys, Ho-Oh, and Lugia, which were things that I was never able to do on my actual GBA games because those events were long done by the time that I got access to these games. I think if you don't think that it's worth it to buy the game, don't buy the game. Play your ROMs, have your fun. I've played the ROMs, I've had my fun, but the one thing that does kill a ROM playthrough for me is that I can't trade Pokemon back and forth and obtain these event Pokemon. At least not without implementing cheat codes, and I just don't like doing that all the time. I want to be able to have a legally obtained Alakazam on my team. That's something that I just haven't been able to do outside of playing the actual physical cartridges with the link cable that I can't even find anymore. I know I own one. I've traded before. I just don't know where it's at. Also, I'm in the middle of a playthrough of Pokemon Emerald version, but it's Pokemon Versión Esmeralda. It's the Spanish version of Pokemon Emerald. I've been playing that because I do remember that when I was a kid, I remember getting a lot of reading practice from playing Pokemon games, from playing these same Pokemon games on my Game Boy and my brother's Game Boy, because I stole his copy of Pokemon Sapphire a lot of the time while he was at school. Now, I'm not saying I'm like Sherman Alexie and I learned how to read entirely through Superman comic books. Shout out if you understand that reference. But these Pokemon games did help me develop an understanding of the language a little bit better, and I truly do think that helped a lot. And since I've been practicing my Spanish over the last couple of months, I decided to play this game in Spanish and read all the dialogue out loud, talk to every NPC, and I feel like it's really helped. I feel like my reading has sped up a little bit because I'm learning the language almost as if I was a little kid again. Now, to be clear, I already knew Spanish, it was my native language, but as I've grown up in an English-speaking society where I went to work and currently go to work in English and went to school in English, and me and my friends communicate in English, you know, your Spanish starts to lose some of its edge, and if you don't sharpen that pencil, it's gonna stay dull. So I'm working on sharpening that pencil and hopefully making it even sharper than it was when I was a little kid, because now I have a better grasp of language overall, and my learning ability is just stronger than it was when I was a kid. But that doesn't mean that the methods that you used to learn when you were a kid won't work for you just as well as an adult. I'm just rambling now. Let's get back to the video. All right, some of you might not understand, or some of you might not agree with me, but the greatest album of all time to this day is Michael Jackson's Thriller. Okay, Michael Jackson's Thriller was one of the most impactful albums in my life, and I'm gonna throw Michael Jackson's Bad on there too. And this is an original copy that I bought back in, I don't know, 2000, whatever the 25th anniversary of Bad was. This included a bunch of the demos that didn't make it onto the final album and a bunch of just tracks that were never released prior. This was awesome. Okay, this was freaking awesome. I wish I could have got like the collector's edition when I was a kid, but I didn't have that kind of money. I was like 11 years old, maybe even younger. There's a reason it's the world's best-selling album to this day, and it's because every song on there is warranted. Every song on there leaves an impact on you. I mean, could you imagine listening to this song for the first time back in '83? You turn on The Girl Is Mine, you got Michael Jackson with one of the Beatles, Paul McCartney. That's already a big deal enough. And then you're like, man, I wonder what the next track is. And then it's freaking Thriller. And then Thriller comes on and you're exposed to this spooky kind of song that's gonna be iconic in ways that we don't even understand yet. And then you're thinking to yourself, all right, that was 2 for 2. What's next? There's no way he can top Thriller, right? How is he gonna do it? And then the next song is Beat It. And then you get a classic Eddie Van Halen solo. We don't even know it's Eddie Van Halen yet. We just know that it's a banger guitar solo on top of Michael Jackson's awesome vocals and dance moves. And then you're thinking to yourself, man, there's no way he can top what I just heard right there. And then the very next song, Billie Jean, arguably Michael Jackson's best song, definitely his most popular song of all time, the most danceable Michael Jackson song of all time, and you still got another 4 or 5 tracks to go on the album. It's impossible to describe the feeling of what it was like to listen to this album for the first time, and if somehow you've been living under a rock or something and you haven't heard this album yet, you need to do so immediately after you're done watching this video. I'm mad at my younger self for being able to experience this for the first time and not me as an adult being able to experience this for the first time, because it's that freaking good that I wish I had an adult brain to process it all for the first time instead of my childlike wonder brain getting its hands on it first. And I think becoming a fan of MJ really made me appreciate greatness and quality performance at a very young age. My expectations were sky high after seeing Michael Jackson performance videos on YouTube, to where that's where I expected from every performer, and mediocrity just wasn't gonna cut it for me at a young age. But being obsessed with arguably the greatest performer of all time really raised my expectations as a kid and really raised the bar for what I considered to be good music. And I say that in the least pretentious way as possible, but there's a little bit of pretentiousness in there. And I think that's why I've always been someone who prefers artistry over charts and numbers. I don't care if an artist performs well. Actually, I mean, I do. I hope they do. But I don't care if my favorite artist isn't #1 on the Billboard charts or #1 on the Apple Music and Spotify charts. I don't care about that stuff. I wish my favorite artists the best, and I hope that they're successful, and I hope that the more people find them, the more the better. But I'm not going to be losing sleep over it, because at the end of the day, I'm listening to them for their artistry, not because I want to show off charts that my favorite artist is better than someone else's favorite artist. And I think that's why I've always preferred someone like Kendrick Lamar over someone like Drake. Drake makes some good songs, and there's a couple songs that I do like, but Kendrick Lamar had the artistry down. It really made me appreciate what music could be. And I think listening to Michael Jackson, music from the 80s, while I was growing up in the 2000s, really made me grow to have an appreciation for older music, or music that came out before I I was born. Artists like Billy Joel and The Stranger, still one of my favorite albums of all time, sticks in my head. Or albums like Illmatic by Nas, which is still one of my favorite rap albums, one of my favorite albums in general of all time. I can still quote lyrics off of every single track on that album. If I don't discover Michael Jackson at a young age, there's a good chance I don't go back and listen to all these artists that would go on to be foundations of my music appreciation. And I can't underestimate how important an album like Michael Jackson's Thriller was to forming my music taste as a young adult. Okay, promise you're not gonna laugh at me for this next one. I'm just playing. You can laugh all you want. I can take it. When I was a teenager, I really started listening to music that was typically reserved for girls. I know nowadays that's not really that big of a deal, but trust me, when I was a kid, it certainly felt like it was. I was a Mexican boy in a poor neighborhood who liked to listen to rap and also girly music. I was easy to laugh at. But the albums I think of the most when I'm reminded of this time period are Pure Heroin and Melodrama by Lorde. Those were some of my favorite albums as a kid, and it really changed the type of music that I listened to. Both made me unashamed to openly listen to music made by women. And again, I know that doesn't sound like such a big deal nowadays, where people can listen to whatever they want and there's not as much judgment, but bullying was a thing back then. And it's not like I got bullied for the music that I listened to, but people definitely got their giggles and teases in. A good friend of mine made fun of me one time when we were kids after I showed her a song off of Melodrama, and she goes, "You listen to this?" Yes, I do. A song like Royals still rings true in my head, man. And then Melodrama came out a couple years later, about halfway through my teens, and it was all about heartbreak and being in love and being sad. It was the perfect way to record being an edgy preteen, transitioning into being a young adult who is coming of age and trying to figure out who they are. These albums opened the door for me to be comfortable with listening to music fronted by women. Albums like Guts and Sour by Olivia Rodrigo, which I remember had come out at a time when I had just made some new friends for the first time as an adult, and I was still learning how to open up with people in ways that I wasn't comfortable with before. And all love to the music that I listen to that is fronted by men. Women just have a better way of capturing these emotions on record, and it made me open up in ways that were completely new to me. Albums fronted by women like Sade had made me more emotional while listening to them than any other artist had done previously. Someone like Clara was the voice of alternative Gen Z kids finishing high school and starting up college, all at the height of a pandemic. I'm the one who started the Claro chant if you happen to be there. And let's not forget, sometimes women are just more fly than men, okay? No concert tee by a male artist was as fly as this scissor tee that I'm wearing right now. I'm really glad that very early on in my life, I was able to get over this idea that just because I was a male, I wasn't able to enjoy the music or any art for that matter that was from the perspective of a woman. Because I know some people who are still restricting the kind of music they listen to based off of their gender, and I know that they're missing out on a lot of good tunes because of it. I could keep going on about all the amazing albums that helped define my childhood and my adolescence and my early adulthood, but I don't have all day, and I know you don't either. But there is one more album that has had a major impact on my life over the last couple of months that I want to talk about. I feel like 2026 has been very good to me, and I've been off to a very good start this year. And it's a bunch of things that have started to add up over the last couple of months. So it started with this book club that I joined, where we read a book every month and we just chat for a little bit about what we think about the book, questions that come up. It feels very rewarding. I feel like it reminds me a little bit of work because I'm talking to people about things that we've read. But the difference is I'm not talking to a bunch of teenagers who are reading the same book that I've read a million times already. I'm talking to other adults, peers, people who are in the same age range as me. And we're talking about these books that we're all reading for the first time. And then we get onto the side of YouTube. YouTube has been going very well for me over the last couple of weeks, and I'm just shocked as to how much the channel has grown so much. Now, as you're watching this, I'm probably somewhere around 1,500 subscribers, which to a lot of people means nothing, but I was so grateful when I got to 100 subscribers, when I got to 200 subscribers. Just in January, I got to 500 subscribers, and then now we're pushing on 2,000. It just blows my mind. And I promised my friends Hobbit and Bizrat that I would give them a shout out once I reached 1,000. So shout out to Hobbit and Bizrat for actually watching the videos. I very much appreciate that. And I appreciate anybody who I know in real life or who I know through social media who is watching these videos, because it really does mean the world to me that people care about what I have to say. I don't even get what I have to say half of the time. So it's great to see that for some reason, people have found interest in me, and I get to share my thoughts with people who want to converse, who want to have a conversation about these thoughts. It should come as no surprise that an album that has been on repeat for me over the last couple of months, really over the last year, is Debí Tirar Más Fotos by Bad Bunny. I've been a huge fan of Bad Bunny since Yo Hago Lo Que Me Da La Gana came out 6 years ago. Happy birthday to Yo Hago Lo Que Me Da La Gana. Un Verano Sin Ti is still the summer album to play as soon as it touches 80 degrees outdoors. The music that Bad Bunny makes helped me reconnect with a culture that I didn't even realize was slipping through my fingertips as I was coming of age. In high school, there weren't very many Hispanic people in my classes, and I feel like that alienated me a little bit from my culture. I was playing this game of assimilation, and I was doing my best to try to fit in. I wasn't purposely trying to neglect my culture or anything, but that was just the byproduct of me not celebrating who I was enough. And that all changed when I started college and I was suddenly surrounded by so many diverse people that I felt like I needed to reconnect with the culture that I felt was leaving me behind. Bad Bunny had brought my love back for Latin music, and I rediscovered so many artists that I had spent so much time in my childhood listening to. Artists like Wisin y Yandel, Daddy Yankee, Zion and Lennox, Aventura, Maná, Juanes. And it also brought me to discover modern artists of the culture. Artists like Rosalía, Rauw Alejandro, and Becky G. I started to reconnect with music that I hadn't listened to in years, and I remembered every single lyric. Listening to that kind of music again helped me rediscover my Spanish literacy that I was losing as I was becoming a young adult. Then seeing Debí Tirar Más Fotos win Album of the Year at the Grammys, not the Latin Grammys, the Grammys, I started to tear up as if I had won the award myself, because that's what it felt like. And then just a short week later, getting to see Bad Bunny perform at the halftime show for the Super Bowl with all my family watching on TV, and seeing this love letter, this auditory and visual love letter to Puerto Rico and Latino America. We were all so emotional, grateful, and happy, especially with everything that's going on in the country right now. It was a much needed win to show how different cultures could come together like that. I remember seeing a statistic many years ago that when it came to movies, television, and music, most people would rather spend their time and did spend their time watching movies and TV shows over listening to music. And at the time, that made sense to me. But as I got older, that statistic started to feel less and less relevant to me. I think music has always been the most important work of art when it comes to me and my life, and I think it's because of the moments and the memories that are created while listening to music. I don't know how different my life would be without music, but I certainly don't want to imagine it.